Hello all, welcome to the channel. If you're here, chances are you're a Notion user, and you probably know that every Notion account starts out as a blank canvas, but over time we kind of develop these idiosyncratic ways of doing things. We'll have our own kind of preferences, our own aesthetic, our own systems, and sometimes watching how another Notion user goes about building can be helpful, at the very least give you a few ideas, and that's exactly what I'll be doing today. I will be building from scratch a digital business hub. Some of you may know it as Clarity OS, and I'll be using a tool called Flotion. So the goal is not to give you a step-by-step tutorial. It's not to say at the end of this video you will know how to do skill X, Y, or Z. The goal is really just to give you a few ideas, give an inside look at how I go about building out my own systems through Landmark Labs, and hopefully in the process give you some inspiration for your next build. So let's get into the build. Okay, as mentioned, I'm going to be using a tool called Flotion, which will be available soon. Maybe it's already available, depending on when you're watching this. And to start a new flow or a new project, simple as going into this dashboard gallery, and I'm going to start one from scratch. So I'm just going to hit New Flow, and we're going to name it Clarity OS Rebuild. Okay, we have our new fresh flow, and we have some instructions for how to get set up. I'm going to follow those instructions and then get back into the build. Okay, so we have our basic setup ready to go, and I typically like to use this first page that gets generated with a new flow, new project, as kind of my space to just sketch out a plan for what we're doing. Now, because I'm going to be basing this mostly on the existing Clarity OS system, I should have a really good template for following and kind of helping me sketch this out. But if I were going about it a totally new build, I would probably start with kind of some main sections or workspaces that need to be covered, because this is going to be a full business, all-in-one business system. There are several business areas to cover. So I kind of sketch all of those out in as logical a form as I could. And then from there, I can obviously add to it as needed. So I'm going to do that now. I'm probably going to fast forward through it, and then we will check back once all of the pages and sections are sketched out. So what ends up happening typically is when I sketch out these main sections and workspaces, you end up kind of getting a first version of the menu that we're going to build. For Clarity OS, the menu is structured by a few different kind of stages of business. So you have kind of a planning phase, you have your actions and actually implementing things that you've just planned, and there's a performance and reflective stage as well, which I didn't actually cover, or I didn't copy across here. But that's kind of a high level of phases for thinking about how we might be running our business system in Notion. And then within that, there are some sub pages in the menu. Within those, there are also some subsections which are structured as tabs. So I'm going to refresh my memory on each of these tabs, and I will also add them into this skeleton plan for the build. Okay, so we now have a sketch of the existing Clarity OS setup, loosely speaking, and I think we can already see we have some work ahead of us in terms of building out. You can think of each of these sub bullet points as a page, and so we have some building to do. But I think there will be some areas to improve on this and some areas to perhaps condense. So for example, with Notion's latest database release, I think there's going to be some areas that we can kind of compress into one page instead of spreading it out into several different tabs. But we will see. So for yourself, if you are thinking through your next build, perhaps kind of just laying it all out as the kind of page structure might be a helpful way to start. That's typically how I do it so that I don't get lost. Now, I was obviously referring to an existing template. You can copy something similar to this if you like the planning, actions, and performance breakdown, or you can use your own kind of methodology and then structure out your pages. So now the next step will be to build out these pages. Now I'm using Flotion, which means that I have a kind of a very rapid way to build out these pages just by using this template and synced block menu. For yourself, if you don't have this set up, then perhaps just simply using this skeleton that you've created right here as your home menu, if you want to have this page as your home menu, and then these could each be turned into pages. So we could take, you would have to, we would have to turn these into pages, and then, I'm sure you would find a reasonable way to structure that. But since I have this kind of side menu flow in Flotion, I'm just going to go about building all of these pages now. We've got many, so we're going to have to structure this menu a little bit. And we're going to need some tabs. We're going to need some breaks in the menu so that it doesn't get overwhelming. But I'm just going to create maybe the first 10 pages and start pulling them together now. So as you can see, when you hit new page in this kind of synced block flow, what happens is an entirely new page is generated with the menu embedded inside of it. It's a synced block, and so as you spawn the page, it automatically gets added into the menu itself. It'll take you to that page directly, and so there's a little bit of a lag between the generation of the page and the taking you to the page. And so if you want to really rapidly create pages, as I've just done here, you can just click it 3 or 4 or 5 times and you'll get a few pages out of that. They are all currently named the same thing. If I want to go back to my home page where I've been planning this out, I can just hit this home link. So I'm probably going to rename these as these pages to begin with, and then we will create some sub pages and drag them in. I'll show you how we can do that quite simply. So I'm just going to rename these as these first layer bullet points, and from there we can start to build out the pages. Okay, we have all of the main group pages, and so what I'm going to do is just a formatting thing, how I like to format things inside of Flotion. I'm going to drag all these pages up here. One by one would be quite a hassle. So I'm going to select one, select outside of it, and then just shift select all of these by hitting the down arrow. And now I can drag these all up here and delete this little instruction. The reason I prefer to keep them up here is so that we keep this new page template button wide open. Okay, so I think we have our menu set up here. I'm not sure if I want to go with the H3 or with just bold text. I think this makes it quite clear and kind of mimics that same environment as having these separate blocks in the original Clarity OS. And each of these now is a page which has the menu, and it has, importantly for us, the builder with all of the components that we will need. And so now it's a matter of final step of structuring the build will be to add in the pages, the sub pages for each of these workspaces that we've just created. So if I were building this from scratch, and I might start with these main pages So I might go into the strategy section. And what I would kind of naturally do is make a list of what to include in this particular workspace. And that would end up being things like the user personas, competitors, research, maybe a notebook to keep track of any thoughts related to the strategy. And I would kind of just list out what might be useful to have as tabs or as individual pages. And that's exactly what we're going to end up doing while we build out these kind of groups of these grouped pages. So I'm going to head back to this home section, and I'm probably just going to copy paste these structures. I think they're pretty similar as what I just written. And we're going to create a page for each of these, but what we need to do is recreate these tabs, which we have inside of the original ClarityOS up here. So these, when you click them, they take you to an individual page, which is related to strategy, and this top tab bar kind of acts as a sub-menu within this strategy workspace. So I think we can recreate that perhaps even in a slightly neater way using this tabs layout tool. So I'm gonna create a fresh tabs. It's gonna take me here. I'll just head back to build, strategy, and it's gonna be down here in this menu where we just created it. I'm gonna drag this all the way to the top. I'm going to, as instructed, turn it into text. And that's just gonna give me the formatting, which will be handy for creating these pages and for creating the links. So the fastest way to create these tabs will be to get those pages, which we've done. So we need a users page, competitors page, positioning, and models. That's rather ideal. Actually, we're going to need one more, which is going to be for the overview. So I just do a few spaces between it. There's nothing fancy with this tabs menu. It's really just text links. And so I'm just going to create a last one, which will end up being the last one. I'm going to rename these up top. So we have models, we have positioning, we have competitors, and we have users. And then I might just name this link strategy, and that's going to link to this page. So the work that still needs to be done is to create pages for each of these. We don't have that yet. We just have our bullet points. And so I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to create 4 pages, 2, 3, 4. We got them all. It's going to take me to the most recently made one. And then the easiest way to get those pages where they'll be easy to work with. So we just created 4 new pages down here. We're currently on our strategy page. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag all 4 of those newly created pages into this tabs little toggle. Now you can obviously keep all of these pages inside of the main menu, but you can see that if we look at our home plan, and from memory, ClarityOS has about 90 something pages. So I don't think we really want to scroll through 90 pages in our side menu. Hence, we're going to have to kind of create a few layers, which is what we're doing here. So I'm going to head back to the strategy page. Our full menu is still there, which is nice. Select it, similar to how we did. Shift select all 4 of these. And I'm going to drag them all into this tabs toggle here. So if I open that up, we got 4 new pages, and I'm just going to rename them these 4 pages that we need. So I think we need a users page. We need a competitors page. We need positioning and models. Now we may not actually need all of these pages, but I'm just going to rebuild the skeleton, and we can take it from there. So now we have 4 pages, and the next step is to create links to these pages. We don't need this anymore. This was just kind of our guidance for planning. So it's as simple as right click, as simple as that. Right clicking, oh, what's going on? Okay, I'm gonna right click on this and I'm gonna copy the link to the page, and I can double click, actually drag and select, and then hit Control V or Command V, paste. Typically it's gonna be easy to paste with the keyboard shortcut. You can select and right click and hit paste as well, but it's gonna be easier to do it with the keyboard. So that's what I'm doing. You can't see me hitting Control V, but that's what I'm doing, pasting these links. And if you want to check, you hover over and it'll tell you which page it is taking you to. So check these. Those are all going to the right places. And we also need this strategy page, which is the page we're on. So we can get that directly from here, just as we've done like this. Right click, copy the link. And now we have a top tab menu, which is going to take us to all of the pages which we wanted to have inside of strategy. Now, one more step that we could do is to turn this into a sync block. Copy it. And just go through the menu itself, which we've just created, or the pages that we've just created, and add it as a menu. You can add it above or below this, this div bar. And I'm just gonna click my way through these top tabs and add this menu, which we'll see will be quite handy just for quick navigation once we are trying to actually use our setup. So now we have our strategy page here in the side menu. So we can't see these pages inside of it, but they're all here inside of this tabs bar. Now, if you want to keep all of your pages for the whole workspace in the map, you can always just drag this into the map itself like that. If I head over to the map, we have all of the databases that are included with any flow, and it's going to get thrown down to the bottom, but these are all of our kind of source pages that are inside of the strategy section. So I'm actually probably going to keep it in strategy for now. So I can just drag it back into strategy. It's going to send it down the bottom, which is a little bit annoying, but I will bring it back up to where we were. And now we have our skeleton for this strategy page. So hopefully that's clear and makes sense in terms of how to go about creating tabs inside of pages. So this is really just reflecting what we've done here with these indented subpages. We have kind of a main, home page, section, which is itself within planning, which is called strategy. There are 4 different pages that we want to create inside of there. And to create that inside of Notion in a kind of web appy feel, we have our main strategy page, which will have probably a dashboard, a home dashboard of all things related to strategy. And now we have a top menu, which is going to take us to those pages quite quickly. So I'm curious to hear if people find this particular schema useful, if you have your own way of doing this, creating when you have many pages and you'd like to navigate quickly, if the top tabs is a useful thing. Hopefully that makes sense for how I've done that. And now I'm just going to go through and recreate that on the other pages. And I'm probably going to fast forward through all of that. So I think we now have our full skeleton built out as pages. Of course, you don't have to go out and build the sub pages before adding anything to it. You can of course go in and add to it and think it through as you are building the pages. I just wanted to get the full skeleton out of the way because that was the tedious part of the build. But we now have, let's see, we have 54 pages that we can use in our structure, and I'm going to be using ClarityOS as kind of the inspiration for what to include on these pages. But of course, if you were to structure something like this with so many workspaces and so many different sections, I'm sure you would be adding your own iterations and your own frameworks and systems to it. So let's start with strategy. I like to leave the home dashboard to the end. So I'm going to go over to the users page and I'm going to reference the original ClarityOS system. So there's kind of a pillars section to remind us of what our core strategy is. Oh, this is on the home page. I'm going to go to the users page. And there is our user personas template. And then there is a target segments database as well. So let's create a user personas gallery. So in Flotion, I can just head down to the strategy section, generate a new user personas gallery, and I can drag that in here. And of course, if I were building this for myself, for my own business, I would start filling out these personas based on who's interested in my products and services, or if I was shipping this to a client or another business owner, I would probably give them these templates just to kind of keep some dummy content in there so that they know what it should look like and which parts they should fill out. So we now have our user personas in there and the target segments. I'm not sure if we're going to include that in this one. Let's just do the main pieces for now. So let's go to competitors. The fortunate thing is that the main components of this build are now part of Flotion's editor, and so I can very, very quickly recreate what we're seeing in ClarityOS. And if you have built out your own workspaces and systems for yourself, I would recommend creating templates from the ones that you use most often, and then either just having them making some duplicate copies of them in your main Notion menu, and then you could even just drag and drop those into the relevant workspaces when you need them, or if you're just setting up for the first time and you're really just building out your own setup, that may not be so relevant. But this is more about if you are kind of in the habit of building solutions for your clients, or if you are rebuilding your own setup often and you notice there are some kind of components, I call them components, you probably have your own name for them, that come up most often, then sometimes having a template version of it to start with to kind of flesh out the main structure can be helpful. So that's what I'm going to be doing with these pages. I will probably check in here and there to make any comments that are hopefully helpful. Now for the models, in the original ClarityOS, we had a model section which was a database in itself, and it was referencing, or it included all of the causal calculators that can be helpful for quickly figuring stuff out in your business. We don't necessarily need that since we have this forecasting panel inside of Flotion. And so if I ever do want a model, I can just quickly go into forecasting and I can create one. So the same models that you would see in this database inside of the original ClarityOS, you can now see and kind of quickly create and drag and drop as needed. So We might keep this page as models, or maybe we'll rename it as modeling, just in case people want a place to drag and drop these models and quickly check something, figure things out. Maybe we could create a layout with a few of them kind of pre-made. I think we could leave the page and people can use it as a space if they need it. But really, the benefit of having Flotion, the Flotion side menu with you wherever you go in these new pages is, let's say that I quickly wanted to, was going to set some objectives. So first, let's create the objectives table, which we will need. We got an empty space in there. So this will be our list of objectives across the entire business. And so the benefit of having this forecasting widget, as I see it, that's why I wanted to ship it to you guys as its own component. So you can actually go to the components library and just duplicate this entire thing, and you can add it to any Notion page that you might have. And I find it useful for things like this. So let's say I'm on my objectives page and I want to set a few objectives for the business, something like website traffic. I could just quickly create an objectives checker. Or if I had a financial goal, I could create, if I have a subscription business, I could use one of these pre-built pricing models and just kind of quickly check. So now I have the model here and I can just drag it in. And so if I wanted to check, so what was the target? 2,500 monthly visitors. 2,500. I'm going to deselect this so it's not blue. And let's say the current is 1,500. Timeline, 6 months, maybe. Yeah, let's say within 3 months. So what I'm trying to figure out is what's the growth rate needed, and is it realistic to set that as my target? And I can also from that kind of derive the check-in date. So let's just see what this checker says. So I'm going for 2,500. Current traffic is 1,500. And I'm saying the timeline is 3 months maybe. So the growth rate needed is 22% if I want to make it to this target. If that's not reasonable, if you're seeing that your own figures are not growing that quickly, you might extend this to 5 months and see 13%. Maybe that's more in your range. Or you can do the opposite and you can play with this growth rate. And you might say, hey, my website's growing rapidly, 50% month over month, which would be great. And then you can find out what the value at the end of the timeline is. So the top, we're going for 2,500. So maybe in 2 months, maybe. So it looks like it's just going to be in 1 month, almost 1 month. So we could even get even more specific. Actually, we can't because they're months. So we might derive from this little quick exercise right on the objectives page that depending on my growth, so let's say that the growth is 20% month over month, I need to find out how many months it will take to reach my goal. 2.6, that looks good. 3 months. So I should check in on this goal 3 months from today. So that will be, you get the idea. So I personally like having this forecasting widget go with me throughout my various workspaces. But perhaps we want to just have a dedicated modeling page and people can drag and drop as they need them. So, okay, our strategy section, we have our users, we have our competitors, we have the positioning, and we have the modeling. So with this strategy home dashboard, I believe we had some key pillars, which is actually a layout that we can use. So I'm going to drag and drop one of those in. And typically this is helpful just as a reminder of, okay, what are kind of our guiding principles for the business's strategy? We're probably going to have specific strategies for areas of the business like marketing, like products, like community, but just a very high level. You could even, depending on how you think about your business, you could rename this to like brand pillars or key values, or you could say strategic pillars. You can use this format probably for a few different use cases. And just to check, what else is here? I believe there's a notebook, which I always find handy just to have a few different workbooks scattered around the workspace, so that if I need to jot down something in context, so if I'm thinking through kind of high level strategy, it's always helpful to have just, well, in Notion, it's effectively an infinite notebook. Create a new entry, tag it with whatever the relevant topics are, and then it's all linked to the same notebook, so I can filter and search through all of my entries no matter where I am. If I'm thinking about marketing over here, thinking about product over here, some community feedback over here, it'll be tagged and all stored inside of my notebook, which I think is handy. Let's start with an incubator board, which is going to be found down here. I'm going to create one of these, drag it in. And then I think we're going to cheat. So we're going to have this incubator board, and then we're just going to add views instead of these tabs. So we're going to make this one product. I'm going to add a view, which is going to be marketing. And I believe that's also a board. So we just have to recreate that, that style of board, but I'm going to create these tabs first. And then this is where the new databases are rather handy, because I can actually choose a different source. And so I'm going to search for our content master database, except I'm doing this inside of my own workspace. And so there are about 1 million content databases. And so I'm going to have to quickly name it something specific so that I can find it. 1 second. So if you ever have this problem, then the solution is to rename your databases. Typically what I would do as a convention, we've created a new flow, and so I would rename these databases as Clarity OS Rebuild, because for every flow that we create, there will be a new set of databases spawned. And so now when I want to search for that one, the content database, it is going to be, it's going to show up, I think, at the top since we just edited it, but let's see. Content, already forgotten what it's called. Master database. And if I just do Clarity Rebuild, Clarity, there you go. We've got it. So that's the source, and we'll create a filter to be just idea status, since we're in our ideation stage, and I believe it was also a board. Board grouped by topics and then type. So let's just do that quickly. Objectives we already created, so that's fine. Objectives, any rules here? So it's showing this, showing that, that's all pre-configured, lovely. Services, we are going to need these tabs because our services workspace is actually quite dense. So circle back to the overview, and we can start with contacts. So we have our CRM, lead properties, and the tools, some tools, along with our targets there. Okay, I don't think we need all of that. For our contacts page, let's just have our contacts, let's just have a contacts table. So if I go clients and contacts table, that'll be a pre-configured component for us. And oops, I've just done this in the wrong page. So I'm just going to drag that into contacts. And it'll be down here with these open menus. It's a lot of scrolling. So let's bring that up here. And I have not completed the full setup for these tabs. So what I need to do is create the sync block. Okay, we're back to contacts and we have our list, and the contacts table component inside of Flotion already has some of these views preset. So we have our by type, by source. I'm going to hide these titles because they're not so pretty. And we have our list of contacts. So that's good. Client portals. So when I'm now in the old Clarity OS and I'm looking at how this was set up, and I'll flip back to our new setup, and all we really need is a client portals component. So I'm going to hit that, create one. And there is a dummy client portal in there. And just like in this original, there is a client portal creation template. If I hit that, it's going to spawn a portal link like this. So this is what the old client portal looked like, which has some quick links and our project overview, and the anchor pages were kind of shoved down at the bottom of this homepage. We have a pre-built client portals gallery, which also has a client portal template in it. So if I just hit this new client portal, we can imagine this is, what was the example? Webflow. We just signed a contract with Webflow rebrand. And we'll just wait for that to load. This will be a client project. You could choose a contact. Maybe it's going to be Lee. Click in, and this is what the new client portal would look like. The same things are included, but it's just been updated with Flotion's components, and the navigation now travels with you. So we have our meetings, we have our shared drive for uploading docs and sharing anything that we're working on, project, timeline. There's now also an invoices tracker, which was not part of the original client portal. So this is the client portal 2.0, and as you saw, this is now just been created. We just created a new one for this Webflow rebrand, and it is living in our services. I just went the long way around. In our client portals. So this is where it lives. We just created this one. We gave it a tag. We gave it a contact. And we could also rename the portal itself to Webflow rebrand portal. So now we have this. Okay, we have our client portals. Lovely. I think that's all we need there. Offerings. Okay, so we have our products database here, and I think what we could do is tag it with yeah, we could just create, we could use these tags, that's fine. And we could just have one that is services. So that's not going to be included for these products. And we're going to filter this to only show filter this to only show services. And then when we add services, so for example, branding, maybe that's a service that we offer. I think it was 2,500 on this last one. And we now also have a use case link, which we can talk about later, which is part of the products database. I'm just gonna, what I could do, if I want this image, is I can actually use the assets database here. And I'm just going to hold Alt and drag this one in here. And then, look, that may not actually be the fastest way to do it, but again, turn it to text. And we're going to have our artwork from the assets gallery inside of this branding box. And I think we said we wanted to, I think the last version had the price on it. Yep. So we could recreate our offerings, service offerings here. Let's rename this view to be service offerings. Okay, and while we're here, no, that's fine. We'll just recreate the same thing for the products. But this is good. I think I'll create a component out of this this offerings table or gallery. Proposals. So if I head over to proposals, what's on this page? We have our all proposals gallery. We have our meetings and calls coming up. This was initially introductory calls for preparing. This was in the prospecting stage, but I think in the end, just having this as meetings or even having a meetings page itself might be the way to go. So let's create, first of all, the proposals. If I can remember where it is, proposals. Drag this one in. And we said meetings as well. Drag a meetings board in as well. So we have our proposals. This is in a gallery view with some more info, and this is showing the same information, but it is in a table. Probably actually like the table a little bit better, but you can of course do it as you please. And now we have a meetings board as well. And if we wanted to have, if we wanted to filter our calendar to only show meetings which had a tag that was introductory calls, we could do that as well. But I think it's better to have it consolidated just in this meetings table. Okay. Bidding. Now I believe the bidding page was just a calculator and also a bids history and an explanation of what's going on there. So the bids history, I'll be curious to hear from you all how helpful you're finding it. Those of you who have been using ClarityOS, I'll be curious to hear how often that comes up. But I think we'll just start with the bidding calculator. Drag that in here. And now, so the idea of this bidding calculator is, let's say you are preparing a project or preparing a proposal, and you have your standard bidding range, you have some history of projects that you've won, but you're trying to kind of come up with a few different ideas for what makes sense in terms of the scope of work, in terms of your typical rate, in terms of factors. There are some additional factors like how stressed out you would be by taking it on board. So you can use this bidding calculator to help you come up with a realistic bid. Okay, so pushing on. Products, we're going to need our offerings, testing, metrics. So the offerings we've just created for the services, so we can actually just recreate that one more time. And the pricing for our products. So now we have our product offerings. Testing is going to be a surveys database. So we have a component for that. I'm going to drag that in. It's under product, surveys. We also have a few more product related components that have been built since the original Clarity OS was made. So we might even add those in somewhere in the build. But now we have our surveys. I'm going to move on to metrics. Metrics is just a linked view of our metrics database, which we also have inside of Flotion by default. Metrics, and we have tools. I think we could create this metrics view here, but we might actually just leave it for the analytics page. So if I were to go here, on this one we just have kind of a list of which product metrics we're going to be keeping track of, and we can choose from our list in the metrics database. Maybe this is just, again, another component that's worth building out. So I can come back, I can circle back to that as I build out the Clarity OS model inside of Flotion. And wish list, I believe this could effectively be our product features table. So let's go into the components, product features. And this is just a table list where we can kind of brainstorm new feature ideas, and we can rank their priority, and we can view the ones that we have selected. So this could be for a specific product build that we are doing. If we had multiple products and we were brainstorming multiple features, we could add another property, and we could link it to the product which is in question. So we're going to type relation, products database should be near the top. Products database, and then we could choose which product it is that we wanted to have this feature for. So a calculator, maybe that's for this email course, maybe that's included in it. And so that is now linked to our products database over here, to this item, not this one, it was this one. So we can see that its features includes a calculator, and it's also related to a use case which is elsewhere. All right, so I think our products workspace is ready, barring those couple of things I need to add. And marketing. Okay. So email components, we need an emails table that's pre-built and ready. We are lucky. Bring that in here. And this is actually an improved version, I believe. Maybe not, maybe it's quite similar. Okay, so this is our emails table. That's all fine. And then we have under email, anything else? Maybe any scripts and things. We have our campaigns. So filtered to show email campaigns. We have our contacts lists, and we have an email strategy workbook. So we could create a workbook quite quickly. And in terms of the lists, I'm not sure how we want to go about that. We could create, I think it's probably going to be best to do, in the end, I think, unless you are really using Notion and a tool that lets you send emails via Notion, segmenting your list into email lists and recreating what you already have in a separate CRM may not actually be the most useful spend of time. But if you were doing that, you could go to your services, contacts, and the type. Maybe we could create a new property, which would be list, and we could let contacts belong to specific lists. And then on this email page, we could have a view of our CRM, which was filtered by lists. Something similar like that. Something like that. Advertising. I don't think we have any pre-built components in Flotion for advertising, but this is just project, incubator, and strategy, and I think it's just done by tags. So that's simple enough. For now. SEO. We have our keywords database, we have a link building board, and we have some SEO tools. All right, that should be simple enough. Keywords is going to be in the content section, but it could easily be in strategy. Add a keywords table. We also need link building board. Now this is a separate database to the CRM, to our contacts, but I think for this, it will be better off to consolidate it in the same database. So let's create another instance of our contacts table. And what we might do is just filter it to show, maybe we could even just do, we could even just make one that is link building. Type is link building. And Clay has just been changed to a link building contact. And now I'm going to filter this list to show type contains link building. And I believe we had it as a board. So if I head back to services, just to show that the type has been updated for this individual, but this, even though the view is named the same thing, it's not actually going to influence this original list of contacts, which is good for us. And I think we had it as a board inside of the original. So we had a board with so we had status, and we had some separate tags for the link building in terms of the size of the domain authority. So we could recreate something like that, but I think for now we might just have this contacts table, and we can also have our view by type. No, we could create a new view by status. So let's turn this into a board. And status at the top. And then we could also subgroup by good fit. Number 1 to every, I believe it's a rating of 10. So we could just do every 2. Oh, sorry. Group range is 1 to 10. Group every 2. And this will give us a bit of a board. Edit the view so that they are smaller. And we're going to rearrange the order. So not contacted. Actually, this is going to be easier to do inside of the status property. And this is actually correct here, but it's not correct here. Interesting. Rename this to link building, and we have our link building contacts for SEO. All right, and also some tools. So I think we have a favorite tools component, which we could add. And I'm going to drag that in. And by default, it's just going to be filtered to show favorite tools. But this is referencing our full tools database. So I can change the filter to be, instead of favorite, we can go to tags and we can choose, SEO is what we want. I'm going to do marketing and content. That may show too many. So I think I'm going to have to go through and tag our tools with SEO as well, but that's fine. For now, we just have a bunch of tools. Okay, tools, that's all set up, so that's nice. Community. We had originally just a strategy page, so not much was actually done in that section, but it was kind of just a workspace that you could add to. Partnerships was another board with a couple of filtered views of our CRM and strategy. So the strategy was linked to a deck and our strategy workbook. So I think we could get away with having our marketing strategy workbook on this homepage and not necessarily needing a new page for the marketing strategy workbook. So we're going to have this here. We'll need to filter it to show, add a filter where the tag includes marketing and or strategy. And this deck, if you wanted to include a deck that you have created for yourself or for your clients, then you could also just copy paste it and have it in this home section here. So now we've kind of said we don't necessarily need this page anymore. Partnerships, we could have our CRM linked view. So let's do that. Let's start from this sales pipeline component instead. But we're going to filter it to only show partners. So contacted, in conversation, that's fine. Then we have our segments. And so what we might just do is filter it to show only the type is a partnership. And we can rename this view to be partners. And now we can see the status of all of our contacts who are tagged with the partnership type. We could also have a workbook in our partnerships section if we want to as well. Community. Previously, this was just another section to brainstorm and think through community strategy, maybe also a research database, but we might get away with having that in our marketing notebook as well. Fortunately, by now, you should be very familiar with creating new pages, adding to this top menu. So if you wanted to add a community section, if you wanted to add something separate, you should have the tools you need to do that. So I'm going to call the marketing section pretty much done for now. Research was just a single page research library component. So that's an easy one. Drag that in. roadmaps. I think I'm going to build out a better solution for roadmaps than what was included in ClarityOS, the original. And so I might, unfortunately, just leave that for this particular build until another day when there's actually a more useful instantiation of it. So I'm actually just going to delete this roadmaps page, go to projects. Projects was initially linked as filtered views as tabs up here, just because it was, as ridiculous as it sounds, it was actually more convenient to filter through this way, I found, than to, in the old version, use this menu, because you also lose sight. You don't see what's in here and people forget. And so I think the tabs were helpful then, but they're not necessary with Notion's new databases, which is excellent. So we can just create one project board and we can create the filtered views that we need. So I'm going to create this one as our main view, which is going to have all of our business areas. And so we just won't hide anything on this one. Okay, so these are the active ones. So it's archive is not checked. It's going to have hiding empty groups. We can open that up. This is a list view of all projects. When it loads, it is. And then this is our archive of projects, all here if we need it. So I think, honestly, this is actually fine to have all the projects like this in one grouped view. No areas is probably not so helpful. But you could also create views with filtered versions. So you could have a content view, you could have a marketing projects view, services projects view. Really just depends how many projects you have going at the same time. So projects, I think, is done. Actions had the same kind of logic about it. So we had, except we only had the one board in the updated ClarityOS, which I think is fine if you're running a very small business for yourself. If you're working with a team and you're trying to assign tasks and stay on top of them, I think building out individual pages for each team member and creating dashboards for their particular tasks is probably the best way to do it. But ClarityOS was originally built for solo and very, very small micro businesses. And so just having the one actions database, because it was really just one person, one or two people accessing the Notion account, made sense. But now we have kind of an updated actions board inside of Flotion, and so we're just gonna have that as our setup in actions. Workflows, similarly simple process of finding the workflows gallery, dragging it in. Now workflows, typically you can use this for things like checklists, planning out sequences, planning out maybe even automated workflows if you are planning a Zapier automation or something like this, or even internal wiki team processes. So if you have a process for new video creation and you would just want to document that, or there's an on-page SEO checklist, things like this, the workflows that are kind of repeat in your business, you can store them in this database and tag them with their respective tags. Okay, so we're back in the old ClarityOS and we're going to the content tab, and I have decided that this can also be achieved and recreated with just the one page. So we don't need the tabs. And we are just going to create one, well, let's start with this content calendar view. And then what we need is an articles, videos, email, social media, and calendar tab. And we can do that all with one of Notion's new databases. So calendar, we could keep the ideas, but we do have an ideation section. So I'm going to create, I believe each of these was a board filtered by the type of content. Okay, so now we have our tabs: articles, videos, email, social media, calendar, and they are all part of this same content database. So that's quite helpful for us. And we have some other things related to content like our SEO in our marketing section. We could also, in this content page, if we wanted to, we could just add another view, which is our keywords. So I'm going to, can we quickly find it? I don't think so. Perhaps not. Okay, content. On to analytics. Analytics, we have a YouTube dashboard, Google Ads, email table, which you've already seen. Our services performance is actually just a list of a table of metrics that are typically related to things like feedback, and we also have a linked view of some time tracking data which is being pulled in through Timely, and we have our base templates from the Data Studio dashboards that are showing up here, and then these are also just broken down by tabs. So I think we could get away with a home analytics view, and for building this in Flotion, the place to look is in embeds. We have a ads dashboard we can drag in. We have an analytics dashboard and a YouTube analytics dashboard. These are quite big, so we may want to actually create these tabs in the end. Yeah, we can create a few of these. So I'm going to turn this into a synced block. And since we have some distinct tabs now, I'm just going to drag these into the respective spots. So Google Analytics is going to be for the website. YouTube might also belong on the marketing side. For our product page, we wanted to have our survey, and we wanted to have our, let's remind ourselves, metrics related to products. So I need to build out that component for metrics. Marketing, these will be down the bottom here. I think we can get both of them. Now in the component template itself, it includes inside of this box with the charts and the dashboard, it includes a walkthrough of how to integrate these templates with your own data streams and also the Data Studio template itself. So we'll keep those in, imagining that we're going to hand this over to a client. We can resize these perhaps to show a bit more. Or we can just scroll through. That's fine. So we have these ones. Our website will have the Google Analytics dashboard. Now we could have also just created these from here and dragged them in, but since I already created them, might as well use them. Services. Now is another instance of the metrics, so I need to build those. And then the personal was for the time tracking, which I think we could recreate, but I think in the end this might be one of those situations where Notion just isn't the best tool to keep track of this stuff. You can, of course, take a look at the Timely integration resources and materials, and if you want to have that set up, and if you do use Timely, it could be helpful. But I think I'm going to omit this one from this Clarity OS rebuild. And so our analytics are really going to focus on the marketing and these website analytics dashboards, along with the metrics. We did have an email one as well. No, we didn't. We had an email table somewhere. Yeah, I think we might just stick to these. So analytics dashboard is probably one of the more common things that will be checked in a digital business, so we can just keep that as our homepage for the analytics dashboard. Financials. Again, this is where things can be more or less tricky than needed. But we have our cash flow, we have a revenue space, we have an expenses dashboard, statements, and runway. And we're going to build a simpler version of this here. So for the home view, we had kind of a summary of all of these. Let's just start with the core Notion-based components. So the revenue table under financials. Drag that in. Expenses table as well. Where did it go? Oops. Expenses as well. Oh, I think I was going to include both. So we could have revenue and expenses in this same page. Copy this page link. Oh, that's because I'm not in that page. So in here, we can rename this revenue and expenses. And we will drag it up again. Revenue and expenses. Drag this up. That's what's missing, is our top menu. So I'll sync this quickly. Runway. All right, so revenue and expenses. I've linked to the wrong page. So that's what's going on here. So I'm going to go to this real page and resync the link. Copy the link, drag and select. So now when I hit this, we're going to the right page. So we have our revenue and our expenses. And we're going to do our cash flow table because I find that a handy one. It's going to be in our financials. And we could also add an invoices tracker. So that could be a new addition to this. Maybe that it can even be on our homepage. Runway, that's a forecasting tool. So if I go to the original Clarity OS, our runway was this calculator, which would be loading. So we can create it here, drag it in, and we have our runway calculator as well. And I think we said maybe even on the home page of financials, we could have, instead of all the charts, we could just have our invoice tracker. We could probably add a few more things, but for now, let's just have the invoices and keep things simple. So this should also be part of the cash flow chart. I'll have to add that as well. Invoices tracker should be here now. And cash flow. We need to include these two items as well. Should really be inside of the call out. So, financials. We have our revenue table and expenses table. We have our cash flow chart, and we have our runway for mapping out longer term trends and how much runway is left. So financials done, kind of accomplished. So this is a kind of for portfolio and milestones, I think, and also testimonials. So we could quickly create this one. We could, I don't think portfolio is a template or a component in Flotion yet, so I'll add that in. I'll also add in maybe a milestones and accomplishment wall, but for now there's not too much to do here since the components aren't ready. For learning, I think this is another instance where we can compile it all into one database. So we will get our reading list, our learning, and our, what was it? Reading, courses, top resources. Those are all going to be included in our research library. I think, so this was, a reading list was originally a separate database, but I think we could achieve the same thing with tags. Courses is part of research database, and top resources is also part of research database. So I've created our research library, and we would just need to create the views that recreate this. So a reading list, so we would create a tag, a new group, which might just be reading, and another one that might be courses, and top resources. We could even do that just to keep it simple. Top resources, and then anything that belongs to those categories we could show, and we could create filtered views for each of those. And then what is left is a reflect, which will just be a notebook. So that's something we already have. Filter will be set to show reflections. That's easy. And then tools. We could create a tools database. Go down here. Favorite tools is the pre-built component, but it is just a filtered view of the full tools database, and so we could kind of hack that more quickly by just removing the filter. And that's going to show all of the tools, and we could group them by area or tags. Group them by tags. All right, so now we have our tools. Assets is part of the Flotion Builder menu. So you could have your assets here so that wherever you are moving throughout the database, throughout your pages, you could quickly drag and use these assets from your database, or you could also create another page called assets. We've seen how to create pages, so I think you guys are well on top of that by now. Now, archives had all of these separate tabs, but they were all just filtered views of the same database. So what we have instead is a master archive, and this is actually a pre-built component which has all of the filters that we need. I just need to hit this once, and it will create, well, perhaps an hour's work of fiddling with the views and such. So we have this, we have our content archive, projects archive, actions, objectives, meetings, and those are all linked to, so we have objectives over here. If I were to archive one of these objectives, it's going to show up in the relevant place. Oh, that's already archived. let's go to this one, archive this one. It's going to show up in our objectives archives. I can't remember what we just did, but okay, so that's the one we saw. That one's there. The same goes for our content pieces. Our archive is just going to kind of slowly build up all of the things that we archive over time so that we never need to fully delete something until we want to delete it from the archives, and we can clear up all of our workspaces and have one consolidated space for projects and tasks and content and meetings that are archived. So that's handy, and I think that looks like about it. Now obviously there's a lot of cleaning up, or there were a few sections that I need to actually build out new solutions for, but not too many, and so I'll go about doing those before I release this in its new form as an update to existing Clarity customers. But this, what we've just built here, once it's updated, will be added as a starting base template to Flotion. So if I were to start a new product, a new flow, one of the templates would be that entire structure that we've just built together in this video. So if you wanted to start from this structure, obviously there's probably a lot more than is needed, but a lot of these are kind of repeat aspects of a business structure. And so you could actually just start from this rather comprehensive in some ways template. So that's the idea of having these models inside of Flotion as in an editor environment, so you can start from this and tweak it as you like. And otherwise, I think that's what's lingering, is the home page itself. So let's quickly create the home dashboard. And now we have effectively rebuilt the main meat of Clarity OS, which has been one of the most popular models out of Landmark Labs. So, long video. Congratulations, I think, to those of you who made it all the way through. We've just rebuilt the entire Clarity OS system, minus some small details. I hope that going through the build and talking through it was helpful or gave you a few ideas for your next setup, whether that's in Flotion or in your own Notion workspaces. While this was a long video, I really have to admit that thinking about the original time it took to build the first version of Clarity OS, even with most of the components pre-built in other iterations and templates, even when I had all of the building blocks, it still took me a good 3 weeks to structure it and pull it together. And while this video is probably going to end up being quite long, it is not nearly as long as the original struggle of pulling that thing together. So I do think that if you are trying to build out these complex solutions, take a look at Flotion and see if it makes sense for what you're doing. I personally am enjoying it a lot. So see you in the next video.